What and who is on screen is important. We're all coming to appreciate that more and more, especially given everything we've witnessed in the past couple of years. But what's just as crucial, maybe more crucial in the long run, is who's behind the camera. And even more crucial than that, who has the money. And that's where Charles D. King comes in.
This good business that we're building is absolutely going to make the world better. The stories are being told about a community that are actually from a community instead of a lens of being told from someone else.
Though King isn't exactly a household name, few people in the entertainment industry have more influence on what gets made, watched, and talked about. Black and other minority artists have claimed a growing share of mainstream power and recognition over the past couple of decades. King has often been there behind the scenes, making the right deals, empowering fresh talent, and ultimately starting his own company centered on creators of color.
Charles is always like a voice that reminds me to look at things like from a 10,000-foot view. You know, where do you want to be in 5 years, 10 years? And he automatically has our ear and our trust. He's been very, very instrumental into my life.
I visited Charles at his home in Beverly Hills. I wanted to find out how he made his way from sorting mail at a talent agency to reshaping the landscape of entertainment. So let's start at the beginning if we can. Decatur, Georgia, the childhood, like we're going all the way back.
Look, I was born in Harlem,
Yeah.
and then my family moved south when I was 4. But then we landed in Atlanta, in the suburbs, in Decatur. It was a nice middle-class neighborhood, and it was great. I mean, I grew up playing soccer and tennis, and my father's a pediatrician, and I saw him build this thriving practice and have his own business during that time.
King went to college at Vanderbilt University in Nashville, lured by a generous scholarship. The Tennessee capital is, of course, a city of entertainers. The young King was drawn to the business side of the industry. But he was also inspired by a television show whose casting foreshadowed his own work, changing who was on the screen.
This show that I used to watch with my mother back in high school called LA Law, This light bulb went off in my head. This character played by Blair Underwood, this charismatic, intelligent, African-American man. And I was like, oh, like that Blair Underwood character. That could be really cool when I go to law school. My life experiences growing up as a young black man in our country, seeing some challenges and issues that we're dealing with. There were some experiences I had during that time that also had an interest for me in civil rights. And so I thought, let me go to Howard Law.
And yet you probably could have been Blair Underwood or the Blair Underwood character in many ways and gone to work for a big law firm and sort of taken that path.
It was clear for me too that wasn't the path for me. The summer after my second year, I got a clerkship at MTV. And one of the lawyers that I worked with there said, hey, Charles, I think you would make a really good lawyer, but you'd make a great agent.
Okay.
And I had no idea about the agency world, and I learned about all these moguls in the industry. David Geffen and Barry Diller. Mike Ovitz had just come out of CAA and had this incredible gig at Disney that didn't work, and his one-year payout was $95 million. So I was like, wait a minute, this agency world, and I thought that actually could be a good fit for me.
So King headed west, as so many have, in search of a future in Hollywood with his then girlfriend and now wife Stacy. And also like many before and after him, fame and fortune were not immediately forthcoming. So this is where it started.
This is where I started when I came to LA. I said, let me start at the oldest entertainment business in the industry, and at the time it's the William Morris Agency, and that legendary agent trainee program, and they were located right here in this building.
I mean, you are at that point incredibly well credentialed academically, and the way that the world worked and probably still works to some extent is you got to go work in the mailroom.
Yes.
I mean, what does that feel like at that moment?
It was tough. It was very challenging financially. 90 hours a week for very little pay. I had $100,000 in student loans. I had to defer them. There's a big reason why particularly at that time, there are not many people from diverse backgrounds in there. One, it's hard to get in, but two, financially, it's challenging to afford it. There were no African-American trainees when I started. There were a few assistants throughout the building. Let's say if there were 200 or 300 assistants, maybe there were 2.
Wow.
And but it was no different at any of the other agencies. That was just what the shape of the town was. The analogy I used to use of what it was like coming up through the ranks, it's like working on the floor of the stock exchange. You know, ticker tape and people yelling, screaming, rolling phone calls, and you got 4 or 5 lines going, working with and representing at times, I mean, up to maybe like 100 artists. So frankly, you know, the threshold of pain of literally constantly putting out fires and solving a problem, and I can't think of a better training ground for what I'm doing now.
King didn't stay in the mailroom for long, quickly working his way up to assistant, then junior agent, just as many had before. Where he went off script, as it were, was with his client list. Whether it was packaging the hit movie Barbershop or repping Andre 3000 and DMX, King was becoming a kingmaker for Black culture.
I would share all of the statistics and articles about the shifting demographics and where we're going, and that, you know, hip hop culture is youth culture, and youth culture is pop culture, and everything is going in that direction, and these are the demographics that are growing, and that the same thing is going to happen in film and television.
That point of view started to look pretty prescient in 2005 when a couple of Charles's film clients hit the big time.
After, you know, talking about Tyler Perry for years in meetings, inviting people out to see his plays, we'd packaged his first movie, Diary of a Mad Black Woman, and you know, set up this unprecedented deal for him at Lionsgate to co-finance and own the movie. And that small film was, you know, a massive hit. It made like $50 million at the box office, and it sold, I don't know, a ridiculous amount of DVDs. And it became the cornerstone foundation of you know, this incredible business that Tyler has built. And so that happened in 2005. Craig Brewer was a young filmmaker that I started representing about a month before Sundance that year. He had this movie called Hustle and Flow.
Feel that.
You know it's hard out here for a pimp.
Hustle and Flow went to Sundance, and that film, made for $3.5 million, became the biggest sale at Sundance that year. And then a few months after that, we started representing Terrence Howard, who got nominated for an Academy Award later on that year. And yes, I went from regular agent in 2000 to senior vice president by 2008, who was running our big motion picture meetings.
As you climb the ladder, this is a good business. It is.
Absolutely.
And you're representing some of the biggest names in the world. And yet you say, yeah, but I want to do this other thing.
When I went into the mailroom, it was with a vision of a 10-year plan to one day be at the helm of my own diversified entertainment and media company. I definitely knew, okay, this vision that I have, this is now the time for me to begin to put the pieces in place.
King left his job to start Macro in 2015. He was determined not only to create a flourishing entertainment business, but to fulfill a social mission as well, centered around a radically and historically underserved community of creators and audiences.
Over time, we created this thing called the Macro Rubric, and there's 6 key points that we look for. At the center of every one of the projects, people of color must be at the center of it, either the lead, co-lead, the driving through line, and, you know, people of color on a broad sense, African American, Latinx, Asian, the wide different demographic that I call of the new majority. And so we choose project 1 that have people of color at the center of them, projects that have a level of excellence of storytelling. And the other thing we of course look for, I mean, all of the years of experience, is we're looking at what is the business opportunity for them. We're gonna take some calculated risk, but here's where the upside opportunity is for it.
His stature within entertainment, the client list alone, would seem to make starting Macro a fairly low-risk proposition. It wasn't. He and his wife Stacy self-funded for 6 months while investor after investor passed. It's not a slam dunk when you go out to pitch it to people.
Not at all.
Were you surprised?
It was harrowing. When I made the leap, I knew that there were gonna be some roadblocks and that there might be some challenges, but that if anyone had the credentials and the background to do it, that I stood about as strong a shot as anyone ever would up to that point.
How come you ain't never liked me? Like you? Who the hell said I got to like you?
Macro's momentum really picked up when they co-financed the movie Fences in 2016. Starring Denzel Washington and Viola Davis, the adaptation of the August Wilson play helped define what Macro would be at its core, combining star power, artistic seriousness, and commercial potential.
And the Oscar goes to Viola Davis.
But Macro's projects, with their largely Black-centric stories and creators, would continue to run into challenges in the marketplace. One striking example would be their highly acclaimed Gothic Southern drama Mudbound in 2017. If we could look at the laptop,
yeah.
I want you to watch what one of your pals said about a very specific movie.
Let's check it out.
The pal in question, Ted Sarandos, the CEO of Netflix. Nice friend to have.
Our first deal, really, we did together was Mudbound. I was in Park City the last couple of days of Sundance. Mudbound had not sold yet. My team had taken a pass on it early, and Charles called me up and said, "Ted, I know that you would get it. Would you please do me a favor and see the movie?" And I said, "Look, there's not even a screening, Charles. I can't even screen it anymore." And he goes, "No, I'll get it to you," and brought over a screener from Mudbound. I was able to watch it, and the next morning, I was at the breakfast table with Dee Reese making the deal for Mudbound, and did very well for us. We were very, very proud of that work. And you think about that little act of Charles knowing to call me, and him being right about it, which he always is. And Mudbound became the first Netflix original movie to be nominated for an Academy Award.
So that's a pretty good endorsement. Tell me that story from your perspective.
It's a very, very real story. We knew we had a great film, and where we were with the offers from the other distributors was crickets. Things weren't looking good. And Ted, I just called him up and said, "Hey, Ted, look, I don't reach out to you on a lot of things, but I think this is one that will resonate with you." And then the rest was history. But the other thing that movie showed, when they did share the data with us, that movie was seen all around the world. At one point, I know it was 25 million hours of the film were viewed on their platform, and they showed us like a quick map of it. It was global. That notion that certain content does not travel, this is a story about a friendship between a young African-American and a young white guy, shared connectivity, two veterans coming back from war, two families, black and white, just trying to live their lives, right? Just basic universal themes and wanting better for their families.
Yeah.
And this notion that these stories can't travel, it was shown on that platform, and that global platform. It's just not true.
Macro stayed true to the principle of having people of color at the center of the creative process, and the work varies widely in subject and tone. Soon after Mudbound came Sorry to Bother You, a darkly comedic, at times fantastical movie set in an alternative present-day Oakland. King was also setting in motion series like Hentified. That's about a trio of Latinx cousins who saved their grandfather's taco shop, and it's currently in its second season on Netflix. All of that success set up what would become Macro's defining project to date, Judas and the Black Messiah. Black Panther director Ryan Coogler identified Judas as the project he wanted to produce after that blockbuster, and teamed up with director Shaka King to tell the true story of a radical leader who was brought down by the FBI.
Without even thinking about it, it was one of the easiest decisions that I had ever made. It was like, yo, we got to take this to Charles. It's got to be a macro project, so that we can walk into studios once we have a solid script. We can walk into studios with half the funding. You know what I'm saying? And just take some of the pressure off, because we know that the pressure is going to be there when we say, look, we're making a period film about the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. It's going to be a predominantly black cast, and we wanted to come in with in a position of power. You know what I mean? And that Charles was the only person we could go to for that.
This is history that people need to know.
Yeah.
And the only way that we can really heal as a country is by recognizing past issues and things that have happened. And it was something that we felt like compelled to get behind. And yes, there was a level of risk to it, but then we also saw the upside opportunity.
And the Oscar goes to Daniel Kaluuya, Judas and the Black Messiah.
I'd like to thank my team, incredible support. Charles King, man. Everyone at Macro.
And how much does the Oscar nominations and all of that sort of award buzz do for not just the film, but candidly for the company? I mean, This feels like an inflection, sort of catalytic moment for Macro.
Yes, business-wise, it's absolutely clearly is opening up more doors. We were already, doing well. I mean, we've had 15 Academy Award nominations for movies we've either financed or produced. But I'd say now it's really going to be about continuing that work, but also we're going to expand. We're building a company that I believe within 5 to 7 years from now will be a $1 billion+ diversified entertainment and media company.
It's safe to say something is changing in Hollywood. From a more diverse slate of Oscar nominees to NBC ditching the Golden Globes, to the commercial and critical success of movies like Judas and One Night in Miami. Not to mention the fierce anticipation for Black Panther sequel, Wakanda Forever. People of color finally seem to be getting a seat at the table in show business, not just creatively, but on the business side as well.
I'd say we're getting to a place where we're within the system. I still don't look at myself like we're one of the establishment or anything like that. But I do think that by our success, it absolutely inspired and pushed others who have now taken the entrepreneurial path. And the thing about it is, it's clear that the content that's in this space is resonating commercially. So many successes that we could point to over the course of the last few years, from Hidden Figures, Black Panther, Crazy Rich Asians, everything The Rock's in, because The Rock is a brother. He's Black and Samoan, period, right? So we know the value of our culture.
Right.
And now we just need to be a part of that value chain of ownership.
Right.
We're coming to the table to be partners as opposed to saying, please, can you make this movie? There's a difference in that. And that absolutely creates more opportunity for those coming after us. And in my opinion, creates more opportunity for everyone.